Hey, this is Joe Gilder from PreSonus. I've been using Studio One as my studio software for almost a decade now, long before I came to work for PreSonus. And I've also used PreSonus products for even longer. Today I want to give you a tour of Studio One Professional and give you a good feel for what it can do. So if you're thinking about making a move into a new environment for recording, whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, I want to show you what Studio One can do so you can make a better decision. There are 3 versions of Studio One. Studio One Prime is free. You can try it now and you'll get some of the functionality here. Studio One Artist is a really great version of Studio One that has a bunch of the stuff you're going to see today, and it comes free if you buy a PreSonus interface. So if you bought something like this I/O station here, which is an audio interface, it comes with Studio One Artist included for free. And then Studio One Professional is what I'm going to show you today. It has the song page for recording, arranging, mixing, has the project page for mastering, and the show page for performing. Let's dive in. Welcome to the song page inside of Studio One. This is where your recording and mixing is going to happen. It probably looks familiar. We've got all of our tracks here and all of the audio there. We can navigate very easily. We've got our arranger tracks, marker tracks, and chord tracks across the top. We'll talk about that later. If we press F3, we pull up our mixer, which we can resize to whatever size we need for our needs. And we can obviously add all of our plugins and send effects here. If we press F7, we pull up our browser. The browser is a big part of the Studio One workflow. This allows me to see all of my effects, my plugins, all of my instruments, any loops I have installed on this machine. Plus, it's got a file navigator where I can navigate files on my computer and external hard drives, as well as a place to shop for different add-ons inside the PreSonus shop, upload things to my PreSonus cloud account using PreSonus Sphere. We'll talk about that later. And also access the pool, which is all the audio files that are in this particular session. And it's all right here inside the browser, which can be resized to whatever size you need. On the left-hand side, if we press F4, we get this inspector view. This allows us to see a little more information on a track-by-track basis, including is this track going to follow any chord track or tempo track? Is it going to... Here we have the different settings for a specific piece of audio. For example, does it have a fade in? Do we normalize the track? All of these kind of little more nerdy, tweaky details you can access here in the info pane. One of the core features inside of Studio One is drag and drop. I remember I was working for an audio retailer when PreSonus first announced Studio One was coming out, and they were talking about this drag and drop functionality. And initially I thought, that's for kids, right? Professionals don't need drag and drop. But then I used it and realized, oh wow, this is better. So for example, if you already use recording software, perhaps this is the way you go about adding a plugin. Let's say we want to add a plugin to this drums bus. In most other systems, this is how that works. We come up here, we click some sort of a plus sign, then we scroll through and find our particular plugin. We want an EQ plugin, we want Pro EQ, and we go find it in the menu that way, right? It's not bad, but it takes some time, especially if you have a big library of plugins. With Studio One, I never have to open that menu. I can have my browser open here on the right-hand side, and it stays narrow. It doesn't take up a whole lot of screen real estate, and I can quickly say, oh, I want a Pro EQ on this track. And I just click here and just drag it and drop it onto the track. It adds the plugin and immediately opens the window. Better than that, I don't even have to have my mixer open to use this. If my kick drum is being fickle and it needs a compressor, I can come grab the compressor plugin and I can drag it right onto the mixer channel. Way over here, as long as I'm on the mixer or the kick channel, I let go, bam, we've added a compressor and it pulls it up right here. And I can quickly see what other plugins are on the kick channel by cycling through these tabs, but I never have to technically open my mixer to add plugins, which is really, really handy. A couple of other things you can do with drag and drop. There's a lot you can do with drag and drop in Studio One. I'm going to show you a few of them, but as you can imagine, there's even more as you dive into Studio One. A big one, though, is, and I'll show you some of this later when we start to do, when I'm showing you some different stuff you can do with MIDI, but let's say I want to drag in a particular instrument, virtual instrument. This one's called Cassette Mood. I just drag this to an empty spot in the session. Studio One does the rest. It creates the instrument track, it loads the plugin, it gets everything ready for me to go so I can hit my keyboard and start playing sounds right away. drag and drop. And if I want to change the preset, I can come up here and cycle through presets like you're probably used to, or I can just keep my browser open at all times, which is what I do, and I can just drag a different preset right on top of that, and it will automatically load it. I just dragged it right onto the plugin, and it knew what to do with it. That's drag and drop. Okay, check this one out. You're going to love this. What if you wanted to add a room reverb to your drum bus? In any other system, how would that work? Well, you would come over here. You'd probably right-click and do Add a Bus Channel. Okay, probably name this Room Reverb. Okay, then we need to put a reverb plugin on this track. So let's find a reverb, Room Reverb. Great, we pick the preset that we want. Then we come back to our drums bus and we use the send section to send these drums to this room reverb that we just created right there. And just like that, with just a few, 6 steps, we've got our room reverb. Let me undo all of that and show you an easier, much better way to do that. All right, I've got my browser open. I see Room Reverb as a plugin here. Let's pick the actual room we want. For drums, I usually like the Medium Studio, which is right here. I'm going to take this preset, I'm dragging it into the session. I'm going to hold it over the send section of the drums bus. Now, when I let go, watch carefully because it's going to happen really fast. You see what happened? The plugin comes up, which you would expect, but check out what else happened. I added a send here on the drum bus. It also created a bus for my reverb, added the plugin with the preset that I wanted, and it also named that effects channel for me. All of that by just dragging and dropping. It did 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 or 5 steps for me just by dragging and dropping. That to me, coming from using like a Pro Tools system where I had to do every step every time, that has been such a game changer. Other cool things with drag and drop, smaller things that won me over when I first started using Studio One. If I want to take all of these background vocals right here, these loop tracks here, and I just need to turn them down, I don't have to create a group, I don't have to do anything but click the first one, hold down Shift, click the last one, pull the volume down. And by nature of them just being selected, they are now behaving as if they are a group. I could even drag a plugin onto one of these channels and it will add the plugin to all of them just like this. Pretty cool. Now let's say you wanted to add an effect to just a piece of an event. So I don't want this is a snare drum here. But I only want to add like a big reverb just to these hits. Now there are a number of ways to do that, but one of the cool ways you can do it in Studio One is by adding what we call event effects. So I'm going to separate this event into its own little section, open up the inspector window over here on the left-hand side, and you'll notice right here, we've got something called event effects. When I click enable, I'm able to now put plugins just on this little piece of audio. There's a couple ways to do that. I can drag a plugin directly to that event effect. Let's try a cathedral. Or I can drag it onto that little event itself, hold down Option on the Mac, and it will create an event effect just on that piece of audio. So now we've added in this big, huge room, and let's say we want to give it a nice like 10-second tail just so that the reverb carries over to the end. That's all we've done. Let me check the reverb. The mix is at 20%. That sounds about right. Now listen to what happened. That's an exaggerated example, but you get the idea. We're able to add a specific effect. Listen, it's still holding out. We're able to add a specific effect to a specific event. So you can do that, as you can imagine, you can do that with all sorts of things. If you need to correct a little bit of sibilance with EQ, you can do that. If you need to put in distortion on a specific region or a section of the song, you can do that. You can also do it by automating the plugins on and off and sends on and off, but you can do that right inside of Studio One, which is really helpful, especially, it's helpful in music, but also if you're doing a lot of ADR sound effect work where you really just need a reverb sound on this one punch, and you don't want to have a plugin going at all times, you can just have it run for that one punch and your session stays clean. The plugins I added to that snare drum do not show up here in my mixer because they're just on a very specific event, not on a whole channel. Check out this cool drag and drop feature that a lot of people don't know about. Let's say you want to record a synth part, but you're not a keyboard player, but you are a vocalist. You could sing the part and then create the MIDI notes from that vocal. Check it out. Dum 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 dum. Okay, I sang a beautiful, beautiful part here. Let's clean it up a little bit. Now, check out what I'm going to do. So we've got this part here. That's nothing to write home about. Dum, 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 dum. But now we can use Melodyne, which is integrated with Studio One. Boom. Command M, it analyzes it, maps it out to notes, so we can see my notes here now. I can just close that out. Now, if you look at this event, it now has what looked to be MIDI notes on top of it. That's from Melodyne. Remember earlier when I dragged in an instrument so I could have some cool sounds? Well, now I can take this vocal that has been melodyned, I can drag it onto the instrument track, and when I let go, check out what happens. It took out the MIDI notes, and now my vocal is essentially playing this virtual instrument. Here's what it sounds like. Just like that, we've taken our vocal and turned it into MIDI in just a couple of steps with drag and drop. Okay, if you like that, you're going to love this. Check out what I've got in my browser here. I've navigated over to the loops section. And you may be thinking, oh, loops, I don't want loops. Check this out. This is different. We've created a proprietary file format called .music loop. So it initially on the surface seems like any other loop. You can see the tempo is 115. We can say, hey, the tempo of my song is 132. Can you match this to the tempo of my song? And of course it can. And then I can audition it right here to see if I like it. Okay, that's perfect. I'm writing a song that feels like a good starting point. What I can do now is I can drag this .music loop file directly into an empty spot in my session, and look what happens. When I let go, it does a number of things, and it's just really cool. First of all, let's open up the mixer and find this track. It loaded this multi-instrument here. You see what's happening? I brought in what looks like just a regular loop, and it brought in an entire channel strip with a bit crusher plugin, a phaser plugin, red light distortion, which is a cool distortion plugin, and then it also loaded up an instrument. So if we look at our instruments, we can see we loaded up this multi-instrument here. What is a multi-instrument? It's an instrument where they've combined a couple different sounds together to create the sound that you're getting, and then that is running through this plugin chain. All of that, plus it brought in MIDI information. So we can see here, we've got MIDI notes here, but we've also got a whole bunch of other things here. We've got some different articulations that are happening, different automation. The cutoff is being automated as you go through. I believe even the gator depth is being changed. All of that was saved in this little file. So now that I hit play, I can change any of these, right? I can change the notes being played. I can change the plugin order. I can remove plugins, add plugins. I can change the automation that's here on the MIDI event itself. And then if I really like what I've done, I can now save it as my own music loop file by just dragging this MIDI event over into the browser. And it says, what do you want to save it as? A MIDI file? Which is fine. We're used to saving MIDI files. No, I want to save it as a MIDI loop that's going to save everything, the instrument preset, all the different stuff that's happening on the MIDI file, and the plugins. That's bonkers. Hopefully you can see how you can use the library that we provide, but you can also create your own library of your favorite synths combined together, two different synths combined, string of plugins, and MIDI note and automation information all get saved into the .music loop file. That's insane. Okay, those are the highlights for drag and drop. You'll see me using drag and drop in different functionalities throughout this video, but that's the overview of some of my favorite drag and drop features. One of the coolest features on the song page is the arranger track. You can see that here. It's these colorful song sections that look like they're just marking the sections of the song, but they're not. They're actually tools that allow me to rearrange the song after it's been recorded with a single click. It's bonkers. Let's say we want this chorus after verse 3 to be a double chorus. Well, if you've ever done that in real life, not in Studio One, where you've had to select everything, like select all your tracks, you have to cut here, then you have to drag these over, then you come back and things not everything dragged like it was supposed to, and then you have to copy this section and paste it and then make sure everything, it's a pain. I've done it and it's annoying. With Studio One, all I have to do is select this chorus and just press D for duplicate. Bam, chorus duplicated. And let's say I want it to go intro, verse 1, and then chorus, and then save verse 2 for after the chorus. All right, let's just move it. I've literally moved it. It's so fast, it seems like it's not doing anything. It's taking everything in that section and moving it. So we've literally just rearranged this song in about 3 seconds by just clicking and dragging things. It is so fun. It's such a great creative way to try out different arrangements without having to spend hours and hours editing. And you can always get back by just hitting undo a few times back to where you were. That's it. That's the one. That's the one. Next, I want to show you the one tool that won me over when I first started using Studio One. It's a simple thing, but I loved it so much. So I had been using Pro Tools for years. I was fast at Pro Tools. I didn't really have a reason to switch. However, I was using Studio One, and I was trying to edit, doing what we call in Nashville pocketing, where we're tightening up the timing of a performance. So, guitar player came in late, or the bass player's in a little early, we nudge that back to make it sound tighter. Now, regardless of your philosophical ideas about that, it is a reality that we do some editing depending on the style of music, if you need it to be tighter or not. Well, in the old days, let's find a beat where I came in early. Let's just assume I came in early here, okay? In the old days, if I wanted to edit this, I'd have to do this, and then do crossfades in each spot to move that piece of audio. It's a lot of steps. With Studio One, it is really simple. I can cut it. Let me show you. I can cut it here. I can cut it here. I can hold down Command and Option or Control Option on the PC, and I can slide the audio underneath without moving the endpoints. So as soon as I get it in line where it needs to be, I press X. We've got crossfades. I can move on to the next edit. Next, let me show you clip gain envelopes. This is relatively new in Studio One as of version 5. Let's say we got a guitar part like this, and due to whatever various reasons, when the guitarist kicks on different sounds, the volume changes, and we'd rather it stay the same volume, or we'd rather adjust the volume on each section. In the past, you would have to do something like this, where you separate the event and then you move the volume like that. And that's fine, but now you end up with 3 separate events instead of 1, and it can start to look visually kind of cluttered. The way we can do that now with clip gain envelopes is pretty slick. It looks a lot like automation, but it's not. It's actually adjusting the gain of the audio file itself before it ever hits plugins or the fader. So we turn on the gain envelope here, and now I can draw in what looks like automation, but it's actually changing the actual audio file itself. And it's more flexible than just slicing up the audio because I can have different curves. I can come in and make this more of a slope like that. This can have more of a gentle slope or a steep slope, just depending on what I need. And I can hear the changes immediately, and I can actually visually see the changes, which is pretty handy. That's clip gain envelopes, and it's all happening at the audio level. If you love mixing, you're going to love this next feature. It's called the splitter tool. I remember early on when I was learning how to mix, I would read these articles and they would talk about things, how they would take the vocal track and they would split it out to, 4 or 5 channels, whether through buses or duplicating the track itself. And they would compress this one and they would add some distortion to this one. And it was all these really complicated mixing setups, which required you to do some pretty complicated routing. Well, you can now get that same result, that same complicated or creative routing on a single channel without having to take up a bunch of different faders in your mix. It's called the splitter tool. Let me add in Fat Channel, which is our channel strip plugin, and let me add the splitter tool and show you what I'm talking about. It's right down here. So it just looks like a regular plugin, but you'll see when I add it, it pulls up this kind of routing matrix here. And this allows me to do a number of things. So for example, I can have this fat channel. Let's duplicate that. Let's add a second fat channel here. I can have one fat channel with one analog compressor on the left side, and I can have another one on the right side. So right now, this is running in parallel. So it's not left and right panning. I can have light compression here, heavy compression here, and I can do my own parallel compression right here on the channel without taking up a separate channel. I can even adjust the individual volumes of each side right here with these mini faders within there. But I can also do some pretty incredible things with this as well. I can do a channel split where I process the left side different from the right side. This allows me to do some pretty in-depth mid-side processing if we want to. I can also do a frequency split. In this scenario, this compressor would be compressing everything below 240 hertz. This one would be compressing everything above. So maybe you want some sort of multi-band compressor, but you want to put your favorite analog compressor on the bass frequencies and your other favorite compressor on the upper mid frequencies. You can do all that and create your own custom splitter setup with anything you can imagine. You could throw a delay just on the high frequencies. You could throw a really light distortion on just the mid frequencies. You can get really creative, and you can have multiple splitters within your channel if you want to go nuts. It's really the sky's the limit as far as how complicated you want to get with this, but it allows you a lot of creative control for both sound design and for just general mixing to really dial in the exact tone you're looking for. Speaking of mixing, if you've ever fallen into the trap of over-mixing a song, this feature will help you avoid that. It's called Mix Scenes. This allows me to take snapshots of the mix and then recall them. So for example, if I get what I think is a really cool mix right early on, so like early mix, it's sounding good, I know there's things I need to do, but I like what I did with the drums or something, for example. And then I come back later and I make a bunch of changes to different plugins and levels. I can come in and I can save that as its own scene, and when I switch between them, it will recall everything instantly. So if I double click here, bam, everything goes back. If I double click here, bam, everything goes back. Let's say here I for some reason got rid of all the plugins, right? All these plugins I had, I got upset. I deleted all the plugins, and I decided to save that as scene 1, great. I decided to save that as scene 1, and then I regret my decision later. Well, I can get back to it without having to go to different versions of the song or different save as versions of the song itself. Just right here within the song, I can get back to here, I can get back to here, and I can get back to here. As you can see, when I move to here, the plugins go away, the faders move. When I come back to here, the plugins come back, the faders go back to their original positions. So this could be a great place to say, this is drum mix 1, this is drums and bass mix, this is overall mix 1, mix 2, mix 3, and we can go back and forth between them, and we can also change what we recall. So if we just want to recall the volumes but leave the plugins alone, we can do that. We can have these kind of filters of when I double click on that scene, what is it going to recall, and we can customize that to our heart's content. This is a really great way to audition different types of plugins, different styles of mixing, different ideas and strategies in the mix without having to do a bunch of different saves to a bunch of different files. It's all right here. You've made it this far, which means you're interested in Studio One. If you don't already use Studio One, this might set your mind at ease. If you go into Preferences and go into Keyboard Shortcuts, down here on the bottom right, you can actually change the keyboard mapping scheme to a system maybe you're more familiar with. So if you're coming from Cubase, Logic, Pro Tools, or Cakewalk, as soon as you make this setting, all your keyboard or most of your keyboard shortcuts should be familiar to you. Once you get used to that, Studio One has the most flexible set of keyboard shortcut abilities that I've ever seen in a recording software. All these are your available functions that you can assign to your own custom keyboard shortcut. So if I want to hit a certain button to make a certain thing happen, I've got all these available to me. In addition to that, we have this, and I can't go super in depth to it right now, but we have this entire macro system that allows us to create our own macros. If you're not familiar with a macro, it's something that allows me to create a series of functions that will happen at a push of a button. So I could, for example, have Studio One create a new bus, rename that track, and add an EQ plugin to it. And it can do all of that at the hit of a button. So I can set up a macro and then assign a keyboard shortcut to that for tasks that I do over and over. So you don't have to wait for PreSonus to come out with that specific keyboard shortcut that you've been dying to have. If you can do it in Studio One, there's a really good chance you can create a macro out of it and assign that to a keyboard shortcut and customize the system entirely to fit your needs and workflow. One final thing on the song page, if you do a lot of MIDI composing, you'll be happy to know that we now have a score view that allows us to see all of these MIDI tracks, but in their proper notation form. You can even compose parts here and then print them out for musicians to come and play them. Also, if you want to change the different articulation for what a particular instrument is doing, you can do that within the MIDI information in Studio One using our new sound variations feature. So for example, this violin, it's just one violin track, but it's changing what it's playing and the type of style that it's playing all on the same track. So we don't have to have 3 different violin tracks. We can have it all on one, and it'll change the sound variation as it plays. So just in that little example, the violin switched from playing staccato to playing pizzicato and back and forth, and that's all saved within the MIDI track itself. Now, sadly, I had so much fun showing you the song page that we're going to quickly show you the other 2 cool pages in Studio One. The first is the project page. This is where all your mastering can happen. So what I do, I've got a song here. I can send it to a new project and Studio One will automatically create that for me. And what it does is it bounces down the mix of the song that I'm currently in and places it in the project page where I can do my mastering to the 2-track mix itself. What's great is I can do this over and over with a whole mess of songs. That's right, a mess of songs. So I could have 5, 10, 20 songs all linked to this particular project page. And then what's cool is I can master from that page, meaning I can do all the mastering processes, plugins, things like that. I can also create a DDP file, which is what you send off for CD replication. I can create all my different exports of, FLAC, WAV, MP3, whatever kind of files you want to export out of it. But also, if I go back and make a few mix changes to a few of the specific songs, when I open that project or that mastering page up the next time to work on the overall mastering session, it will say, a little window will pop up that says, hey, songs 1, 3, 8, and 7, I don't know why I did it in that order, have been changed since you added them to this project, since the last time you opened this project. Do you want to update these mixes? And you can say yes or no. If you say yes, Studio One acts like your own virtual assistant. It opens up each of those songs one at a time and renders the latest version of that mix into your session. So while we've got one song here, we'll end up with as many songs as you have on this project, and they'll all update on their own without you having to manage the files. Then you can do all of your mastering. It's a really great page and workflow. One of the most exciting new features in Studio One version 5 is the introduction of the show page. Let me show that to you really quickly. Just like we did with the project page, I can take this song and I can add it to a new show. And what Studio One does is it creates a show for me. Let's do a show with a bunch of real instruments. And it will create what we call a show, which is, it looks a lot like the Studio One song page, but it's laid out in such a way that we can use Studio One as our performance engine for a live show. So whether you're doing a live show from your studio, or if you've got a laptop rig that you want to take out and use as your kind of hub for everything you're doing at the show, you can. You can do as much as have every band member fed into Studio One and use the Studio One plugins to mix the show, or you can strip it down as far as all of your instruments go into Studio One. You're using your keyboard to play some virtual instruments out of Studio One into the front of house for your show. You're running your personal microphone through Studio One with your favorite plugin settings on your vocal for the live show. You can have your guitar plugged into your interface at the show running Ampire, which is our guitar amp software, and you can have each different song and each different section of each song have a different amplifier preset with different plugins and you can use plugins, or you can use guitar pedal effects inside of Studio One to play all the different tones for each song. So it becomes this massive place where you can create as much as you want. So you can have real instruments, which means I'm plugging a microphone or a guitar into Studio One and running it through plugins, and I can add plugins like you see here and adjust the volume here. You can have virtual instruments where you're pulling up any virtual instrument you own, whether it's a PreSonus software or something else, and you can play it live. And you can have the instrument and the patches and the presets and the plugins all change on a per song basis, or even from section to section. So I can be playing organ for the chorus and then switch to piano for the verse, and Studio One will handle all of that. The third type of track you can have is backing tracks. So we just added this song we were just working on, and it added it as the 11th song here. So I can play a mix of my song back as backing tracks. I can process that however I want, and then I can have my vocals, my guitar, my keyboards, my bass, anything else to play along with it. This is a really powerful tool. I could probably spend 2 hours just showing you all the cool stuff within the show page, but hopefully this gives you at least kind of whets your appetite to check it out more. Studio One is a fantastic DAW for doing recording and mixing and mastering, but now it's also a really cool tool to use for performing as well. And if you have Studio One Professional, or if you're a PreSonus Sphere member, the show page is included and adds a whole lot of value to your entire setup. Thanks so much for watching and sticking it to the end of this presentation. Again, my name is Joe Gilder, and I hope this has been valuable for you. If you want to dive into Studio One and you haven't got it already, there are a couple ways you can do it. First, you can get Studio One Prime, which is a free version. If you need an audio interface, which is the thing you're going to plug all of your equipment into to get it into your computer to record and play back, then get a PreSonus audio interface. We have a lot to choose from, and Studio One Artist comes with it. That's normally $100 by itself, you get it for free with an interface. That's an incredible deal. Or if you want to use Studio One Professional, which is what I've been showing you today, you can buy it outright the way you normally would from your favorite dealer, or you can become a PreSonus Sphere member. Now, a Sphere membership is a monthly or annual membership that gets you Studio One Professional and also Notion, which is our notation software, which I haven't even touched on today. In addition to that, there's a couple of extra bonuses you get as a Sphere member. The first is you get all of the Studio One add-ons that we sell in our shop, the stuff that we've made. There's some great plugins and sounds that you can get. You also get monthly training from myself and other PreSonus staff to help you get the most out of your membership. Thanks for watching. See you later.